What's good, YouTube? It's me, Squid. I just literally just landed and got home from YCS Pasadena. I want to do a quick recap. So, long story short, I scrubbed out of the event. I think I was like 5-0 in round 5, doing pretty well. For the most part, just playing like against tier mirrors, against sprites until round 6, where I made like a crucial misplay. I basically my opponent is game 3. We had like a minute left on the clock, and he went like full combo everything, but he didn't end on any disruptions. So I actually drew for turn. And he burned me with scatter shot, so I was at 7,500. I was actually able to attack with Sheeran over his sprint. Because I had Scream, would have reduced his monster's attack by 500. So I would have normal summoned Sheeran, milled 3. His monsters lose the boost, so sprint becomes 900, and then I would have just swung with Sheeran into the sprint to essentially win in time. But I literally just got so excited that I was gonna win a basically unwinnable game that I totally forgot to mill with Scream. So I would just like activated Scream, normal summon Sharon, attacked, and then I realized, oops, I am only doing 400 damage instead of the full amount that I needed to. So I was still down 100 life points because he scattershotted me, so I lost. So that was hilarious. And then from there, it kind of took a downward spiral. So the guy that actually beat me there, he ended up topping, I believe. And then the next round, I literally bricked 2 games in a row. My opponent wins Dyro, sets up Dweller full board. I opened like both of my traps, both games. Game 2, I literally have to like normal summon them early, and then I hit 3 spells. So it was just like my mills were super unlucky. I bricked, and that person that beat me also ended up top 16, I believe. And then from there, things took like a real dive for the worst because my friend Marcus actually lost his binder. He brought like this super high end binder with like probably at least 30k USD worth of cards in it. Starlights, multiple Starlight Charmers, Ghost Rares, like 40 copies of Pearl Rhino in it, Ghost Stardust, everything in there. And yeah, he's just trading around, and unfortunately, like a bunch of people were trading him at once, and he just took his eyes off of it for like 2 seconds maybe, and looked back and it was gone. So that obviously was a huge, shock to everyone in our group. Everyone, all of our friends that went together, was just like, everyone was just like, we just lost the motivation to play from there. Just knowing that someone made off with essentially like a large chunk of our friend's Yu-Gi-Oh collection that he spent, more or less his entire life just saving up, building up, trading, and going to different events. So it was just so devastating. I couldn't really play after that. I ended up just playing the next round and just like super half-heartedly, not really caring, making a ton of misplays, and we ended up tying that. So essentially knocking us both out of the tournament. Yeah, it was just really, really devastating that that happened, and ruined the entire trip, I would say, and ruined the entire event for everyone, for myself, for especially for my friend Marcus, who lost all of it. He actually took it really well, but all things considered, it's just such a devastating thing that I think just made this tournament so crappy for everyone involved. But yeah, I want to do a quick little recap, talk to you guys about the deck recipe that I played. Otherwise, I think it was definitely good enough to get there, to get to top cut if, things have gotten a little bit better. Sometimes in a tournament, like one little mistake can just like cost you the entire tournament. So in my case, like that Scream, obviously like making that simple misplay that I literally had game, but I served the win to my opponent on a platter. It just like kind of, it's tilting. So from there, you kind of just go downhill from the one mistake. But obviously, again, I can't really be mad because my opponent, if it wasn't like timed, then my opponent would probably win that game anyways, just because my hand was so weak. But yeah, things happen. Anyways, without further ado, so played like a standard engine, 3 Calbeck, 2 Agido. I actually was playing on this at 1 previously, but I did boost it up to 2 because this is just such an incredible card as an extender. I ended up playing Asa in my deck as well, so this can just be a free Asa on your turn when your opponent mills off Happiness or something, and you can just summon this from your hand. Or for a free rank 4, which is just like super insane, being able to build your board during your opponent's turn as well. Let's say if you like Happiness, go into Kelbeck and decide to mill, and then you're able to resolve a Nagito in your hand, just puts like 2 bodies on board with Happiness at 3. So that's just really one way to beat things, especially like Abyss Dweller in the format. They're just so super oppressive. Just putting bodies on board is super important, so I ended up putting this card at 2, and I think even maybe 3 is correct, just because you want a higher fair count. If you do happen to be playing Herald of Orange Light, and just having a Agido again as the extenders or like defensive options, so your opponent doesn't go for a game, just having 2 bodies can help you during their turn. So that's why I decided to do that. 3 Caldo, 3 Medora, I think are just absolute staples. You don't want to build these as fast as you can at all points of the game. Obviously, having more copies of this can put you ahead as opposed to your opponent, because they can't play the game, essentially use their graveyard. They can't shuffle these back. If you have like 4 of these in grave, them milling one of these doesn't even invalidate your entire graveyard because they can only target up to 3 at a time, so they can't even bait them out. So yeah, I decided to play through Herald as well. This card, I don't like it, I'll be honest with you. I think maybe it's because I wasn't playing like a super large fairy count. Some people were playing diviners as well, but I was breaking on this card like multiple rounds. I would see like hands with 1 Herald and no fairies, and it was just chilling in my hand, doing nothing. So I almost feel like it's not that good in the mirror match. I was typically holding this for Abyss Dweller unless my opponent played something super impactful, like they had to resolve a name or something, and I just like would herald that. But for the most part, this was just like if you see it in your hand, try to hold it for Abyss Dweller on your turn, because like obviously Abyss Dweller is the thing that's preventing you from playing the game. You're not going to be able to resolve your 3 tier effects. If there's no Dweller, you have a really good chance of winning because again, you're able to bait them with your 3 tier effects in addition to whatever other copies of cards that you have in your hand that can push for tempo. Things like Change of Heart, Tactics, so on and so forth. So I typically like to hold this for a Dweller, but other than that, it's not that great in the mirror match. You can hit obviously Magnum, which is also a big high impact card that you should be hitting with this. But I think it's actually a lot more better against non-tier decks. So against decks like Flunderees or against Sprite. For example, if they normal summon a Beaver and you go Herald of Orange Light, that's just like super impactful, especially if you happen to discard like a Kalebeck or Agito. You obviously get the mill on top of that. So you're like just getting rid of the monster and also being able to tap into your engine. Whereas I feel like in the mirror match, a lot of times this card is just almost like a -2 because you just lose 2 cards out of your hand, trading for something that they might have just like got out of a free mill. It's not even a card advantage that they're losing. So it just felt like it wasn't that great in the mirror match, I would say. I almost feel like going forward, this would be better sided, and then maybe main decking cherries just because of the sheer fact that this deck essentially is tier 0 and everyone's playing it. So obviously Herald being better against the rogue options, I think it'd be better in the side deck, whereas cherries just hits like Kick Callus in the mirror match or Dweller, and it's just super high impact in the meta game that everyone's playing tier elements. So I didn't really like this card, I'll be honest. I know the Top Cut people played like 50-50. Some didn't play this, some did. So yeah, just thoughts there on that. Obviously, I decided to play the full tier count. I know some people are actually cutting down on Rhinoheart and even early, but I don't think... I mean, maybe Rhinoheart can be at 2. I guess there's an argument for it if you do want to play like a smaller count as well, closer to 40. But I think like the rest of the names are just too important because you do want to see them off your mills. For example, off your Happiness mills on turn 0 in response to one of your monster effects. It just like puts you ahead so far. So I think Rhinoheart maybe could go to 2. But again, I just think it's such a nice starter, especially if you do play like a lot of Bestials in your deck, then this could be a lot better as well. Just having like the one starter to try and push your plays, as well as being like a rank 4, level 4 body for rank 4s. 2 Druistorm. So one thing you might notice about this deck, I didn't actually end up playing Bahamut. I was just like chatting with some of my friends. We decided that like every time you mill Bahamut, or Magnamut, sorry, it's so bad. Every time you mill Magnamut, they just bring it back with Dark. So not playing that actually just invalidates Dark in the mirror match because they don't really have any good targets aside from maybe one of your fusions. But they can't just go like, if they're starting and I go like Happiness and I mill like a Magnamut and they like target it and bring it back with Dark and search Jerusalem, it's like I'm already super behind, it felt like. So like just having like Jerusalem as opposed to Magnamut mean that they never would be able to do that. But in hindsight, I think you actually might need Magnamut and a higher Bestial count just because of the card, the sheer fact that the card is so oppressive if you do happen to open it in your hand going second. Because again, you put a body on board, you banish something, and then on your turn, you search a Jerusalem, so you have another body. So even if they have a Bestial, or a lot of times you can just push through, given that you have 2 2,500 bodies that you're able to put on the board and just attack. I feel like probably in hindsight, it was probably a mistake. I felt like I was losing so many games because of Magnamut, but again, I just think the card is just so powerful. Because in this tournament, I lost like all my die rolls except for like, I think 2. And every time they would just like go make their full board with Dweller. And I would just stare at my hand and I have like maybe 1 or 2 hand traps. So like a Happiness, maybe like a Calbeck or something. And it was just never enough. But it felt like if I had a Magnamut, it would have put my chances of winning a lot higher, especially even if they Dweller me, like I can still search in the end phase and then just put another body on board. So In hindsight, that was probably not the best decision. As well as playing level sixes, you can actually put on like a Magnemite onto the table, and then make Beatrice with Jerusalem or like with a Garuda. And you can see I'm not playing Beatrice here because of the fact that I'm only playing 2 Jerusalem. So I think in hindsight, probably 3 Magnemite and like multiple Jerusalems is just standard going forward. Because again, this I was a little tricked by the OCG videos as well because like I was seeing they weren't playing them, but the sheer fact is that the existence of Maxi over there just makes their metagame completely different. So like they're like banking on having Maxi battles and like stopping Maxi, and the Beastials aren't like always as easy to put in the deck because their decks are so huge with the additional Maxis and maybe Ash if they want to stop Maxi. But in the TCG, I feel like it's just such a good option because the games are so grindy. There's so much grindier. People can play greedier decks, like just special summoning a bunch of times in one turn, and then just like they never get punished, right? Because there's no Maxi. So us having like the Beastials as bodies allows us to mitigate that. So that's why I think like moving forward, probably Magnemite is a lot better. This is just like a clever thing I thought of just before the tournament that kind of backfired. It is hard again because you do have to submit your deck recipes on Thursday or like before Friday on 10 a.m. PST. So that makes it a lot worse. So you can't really, you lose an extra day of testing, especially if you get it on Thursday like most people do. So that kind of hurt a little bit. Change of Heart and 2 Tactics. I decided to play these because I felt like they were the best going second cards. Super Volley, I didn't like that card just because it's not very good. People were playing around it. No one's leaving Dweller and Rukalis, which is funny because a lot of people actually were against me in the early rounds. And I'm like, wow, if I had a Super Volley, I'd punish them so hard. But I think these cards are pretty good in that, you can steal bodies, you can steal Magnemites if you're going first, and then Magnemite you and dark it back. Change of Heart was especially MVP because you don't have to wait for them to use an effect. So I thought that card just like put in work. I was stealing a bunch of big bodies all day. Rukalis stealing Rukalis while they have Kaleido Heart and Suliak is funny because you can actually like bait out the Suliak when you try to negate their Kaleido Heart if they like get it off the field and try to revive it. 2 Pot of Desires. I actually love this card because it allows you to draw 2. Again, you play multiple names. Especially when they dweller you do want to draw into things like these tactics, change of heart, beast steals, so you can actually mount the bodies on board and try to push back. It was okay. It was okay. In the tournament, I think I drawing a lot of cards like change of heart and stuff off of it was really, really good. But a couple of times I did draw like desires off desires, which is like super low chances. But again, it was just kind of anecdotal evidence, and that kind of stung. As well as a couple of times I actually banished 3 names. So I banished like 3 Merly against a guy, and I was like, holy smokes, that kind of puts me behind. So I don't necessarily know if Thought of Desires is needed in this deck because you can essentially lose the game because of it if you are banishing like very unlucky banishing 10 and just hitting like multiple names or like multiple of these. It just puts you a little weaker because your mills just get worse, especially in a grindy game. I think it's a lot better going second because of the fact that you do have to, sometimes you're desperate to push through the board. But again, I think moving forward, you might be able to actually cut these just to play. I think this deck should play as close to 40 as possible just so you do get better mills. I know like in the finals, like Jesse Cotton was like milling 20 and hitting any names. So like, you do want to get your best chances. 3 Predator Rhino, this card is super, super good. Some people are playing Demise of the Land with it as well. So that's kind of an option. Having this in the mirror match obviously puts you so much further ahead. So it is another option to have. Obviously, Terraforming to pair with it. 2 Scream. I did want to play 3 because this is so crucial going first, especially in the mirror match. When you have this on the table, you're able to play during their turn by getting 3 mills for free. But it was so bad going second when they dweller you because this essentially does nothing. So I was always siding out a second copy going second, just because it is so bad in dweller. And again, I think like 3 is just like not optimal because if they do dweller you, it's just a dud. So that's why I decided to play 2. We went over these, obviously, being tempo cards. Tactics was okay. For the most part, you do just steal with it just to push through the boards. High rate draw, this was supposed to be a mine out. I think it's better than Heartbeat because you can mill this. And essentially, like, on their turn, even if, like, it's not just for mine, you can actually just push through stuff. You can trigger your own Kikalises, trigger your Kaleido Heart. You can bounce. You can play around things like tactics or change of heart, obviously having this in the graveyard, but it did brick me a lot of times. So I don't know if it's really worth it. A lot of people were, I didn't get mine a single time in the tournament, maybe because I like dropped pretty early, like halfway through. But yeah, I think it's the best mine out in this deck, but better than Heartbeat because you don't really have the opportunity to search Heartbeat. Like no one's going to search Heartbeat going off Kikali's blind. And like during their turn, there are better things to search if you do happen to make it. So I think this card's a lot better because you can mill it. And then one Celiac. I think playing low track count is correct because every time I lose, a lot of times it's just like I bricked on these pink cards. And it's just like never a good feeling. So I think Celiac, you can just recycle it with these, shovel it back, that you just one's good enough. Crime, I really didn't like. I bricked on a lot, but I think it's needed going first just to protect like some of your cards that you're siding in. And obviously against like Dweller if they happen to have like Gamma or something like that. Okay, what else? Video's a little long, but Ghost Reaper, this one's super actually really good against Kick Kalos. A lot of times you should be hitting Kick Kalos unless they have like, unless it's like a weird hand where you just like better off hitting Dweller if like they already have the nuts and they're just like derping on you, like milling a bunch of cards and they don't really need Kick Kalos, then maybe hit Dweller. But for the most part, hit Kit. This card I think is still like the best going second card in the mirror. Spooky Dogwood, like this card is absolutely crucial. Every single one of my tier mirrors, I played like 5 tier mirrors, by the way, went into time. In game 3, this invalidates Scattershot because everyone's playing Scattershot. So obviously having this going second and even first, I started going first with like any time after like 15 minutes, I always sided in going first or second. Obviously having this just like invalidates their time cards because you're gaining life when they special summon, and it could just win you the game because like already the game's taking so long that it is going to time. It's better than maxing time. Like they have to pass their turn, and you're guaranteed to gain life if you chain this in response to like a name or something. So yeah, they really got to work on the time rules, I think, just because this mirror match is so complicated. It takes forever that you do go into time like every match, even if you're playing the absolutely fastest that you can. Scattershot, this card's not once per turn, by the way. I think I did it like 3 times. I milled it once, milled it once, elfed it back, linked off, burned again, shuffled it back with one of these guys, the shufflers, and then I sent it again with Sprint. You could technically do it again with Beatrice, so like 4 times and burn with 2,000. It's kind of funny, but like again, it's kind of also sad given that time is the thing. But it is unfortunately needed due to the circumstances of the game. 3 Cosmic, 1 Harpies. I think like this should be sided in against every non-tier deck because they're all playing stun cards. You know, a lot of people are even playing Soul Drain and Sprite because it does shut down this deck. Obviously against Flunder, this is really crucial. So I think you should just maximize on these cards. So in the offhand chance that you do play like a non-tier deck, you already have a good chance of winning because your deck's just inherently better. But these just push you over the edge that you have ways that you can enable yourself so you can play. Same thing with Skill Drain. This is obviously against any non-tier matchup because it also cancels out things like Dweller. You can just like literally, or sorry, not Dweller, but Shifter. If the Shifter you set Skill Drain, you're like, okay, flip Skill Drain, you can't play. I know some players are also playing Artifact Scythe and Sanctum. I think Jackson was. He's one of the guys that I did deck profile for his top 32 in Sprite that he accomplished this weekend at Pasadena, and he was playing Lancia with Artifact Sanctum, so that kind of had crossover that you could side in Scythe against Mirror Match and like Sprite, but also have Lancia for like things like Plunder, so that's another option that's really cool as well. And then 1 Crime to sort of protect things like this and your Dweller. Extra deck super standard. I did play 2 Kick House. I think you could probably get away with playing 1. I was just super scared that someone might banish this, or like, you know, if they're playing like Fenrir or like Reaper or something. But again, like 2 did come up like once or twice. But I think this would be cut if you play Beatrice, and then that way you can play with the Magnemut, so you have the Beatrice package to do that. Dweller, Zeus, Exciton. This card was MVP against non-tier decks. I was using it in like every matchup. Against Sprite, they never see it coming. You Exciton, then you can make Zeus. Same thing against Flunder. It's like insane. Against Flunder, especially, like you can't attack a lot of times because they have an Impidant just chilling on board. So putting this in defense and just like blowing up the field was crazy. Boguska, same thing. It mitigates Dweller. My friend Kevin Lynn's gonna kill me for this because in 3v3, I got shifted. Not Dweller, shifter. This invalidated shifter. I got shifted and I just passed and they killed me when I should have just like summoned Agido when they shifted me. It's normal summon to Sharon and just made Baguska to like invalidate that because they didn't have any outs. So, but for the most part, you should always summon this into the extra monster zone. So if they do play Nightmare Cerberus in Sprites, then they cannot out this. And this just allows, like, it shuts down every non-tier deck because they just can't play. It's a skill drain. And then on your turn, you can tilt it to attack and then proceed to play out your hand and then make Zeus afterwards. So this card is absolutely existential in this deck. Redoer, I think you do need this as well. Again, like, being able to trigger our names when, like, they just stop everything else and we have bodies on board is just super important. This can trigger Sheeran. As well as being 2400 was super impactful, especially in time. I think I won one time in when it was approaching time because I was able to make this to swing over like a $1,700 just to put that extra like 400 plus 3, so 700 damage on board. That did 200 extra over the scatter shot that they did on their turn. So again, having like a big body is also super critical. Asa was amazing. I was not playing this before, but this pairs so well with like Keldo and like these Medora. You're able to bait your opponent's shuffler. They have to, when you target it, they have to shuffle, and then you can from there have another body on board and then just make sprint and then just dump the tournaments early and go full combo. So this card is really good. Dark, obviously, MVP against like the Bestials. Elf was really good. Sprint was really good. And again, the last card was the second Cals that I took out. So yeah, that's a quick little recap of. Unfortunately, I did not do too well in the tournament, but I think like things has gone right. If I didn't make that misplay, if my friend didn't get his binder stolen, like I, just had a better mindset playing the game, obviously just was able to focus, it'd be a lot better. But again, this tier, I love the deck. It's really, really skillful. There's so many decision trees that you have to make. Obviously, there are things that do skew the mirror, like things like Dweller, just so powerful. Maybe Artifact, Scythe, if you do play that. Reaper's pretty one-sided as well. Sometimes it can be, and obviously all the time cards. But again, I think the deck, for the most part, the mirror match is really, really nice. And I'm excited to see how people innovate this. If you guys have any suggestions, definitely let me know how I could make this better moving forward. And leave a comment, like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Deuces.